Well, apparently Vince McMahon is convinced that there's a lot of companies out there that agree with me. So Vince has gone and brought himself back into the fold after his self-imposed retirement. After a couple of allegations came out of some payoffs for various indiscretions, and he's come on. He got a couple of his cronies on the board, and Vince is back in control. And he's only there for the help facilitate the sale of WWE. He has nothing to do with creative, apparently. And there's rumors that the Saudis are here with the Public Fund Trust and they're going to be buying WWE. Wayne, what are you hearing on WWE, the sale? And do you believe that Vince is really controlling himself and not going to be part of the control team on WWE, creative team?
I don't know that Vince McMahon has the capabilities to keep himself out of kind of meddling in everything that's going on in the company. But I think now's the time to sell. And I think if you're Stephanie and, Stephanie stepping away, supposedly, or stepping down or whatever else, look, I would think that if you're going to have somebody negotiate, it's probably should be Vince. And I think the most money is going to come from the Saudi fund. I mean, I think there are plenty of other people in the U.S. who would be interested in it, but you could go to the Saudis and go, well, it's yours if you give me 20% more. And they're like, yeah, okay, whatever. They don't care. Right. So
Ask the
they buy it,
golfers.
right?
Ask the
Yeah,
golfers.
exactly. Right. I mean, it's just extra it's just extra pocket change laying around. Right. So do I think that there's going to be a sale? Yeah, I think the sale will happen relatively quickly. Do I think it's going to be to the Saudis? Yeah, I think it's going to be to the Saudis. Do I think there will be any fundamental change in how the WWE works? I don't think so. I think the Saudis are smart enough to just kind of go, you know what? Things are fine here. We want them to do more events over here, and that sort of thing, maybe do a little more international stuff. But I think for the most part, things will function the way they will. The question will be, will the Saudis then up the amount of money that goes to the wrestlers themselves? Will you start seeing maybe some people who would consider, like, let's say Rob Gronkowski or somebody like that, if all of a sudden, if you're the Saudis and you've got the wherewithal to say, you know what, Rob Gronkowski, we're going to give you $10 million to make an appearance and wrestle at WrestleMania. Hey, you know what, whoever the hell it is, right? We're going to pay, right? There could be some crazy stuff that happens here, right? And I'll tell you what, the other thing is too, is that I was reading a little interview with Vince about when he actually acquired the WWF from his dad. And then basically his dad had no idea that he was going to consolidate all these small things, right? And then his dad would have totally been against it. I could see somebody stepping back in and sort of trying to, if it's the Saudis or somebody else, starting to develop sort of a minor league system again, but one that they control the way that baseball does. As it runs right now, there is such a huge drop from the very top echelons of pro wrestling. Even when you get two steps away from that, it's pretty crazy, right? Guys are not making any money and everything else. They have the development academy, and I know they have their scouts and all that sort of thing. But if you could develop a territorial system again, and then kind of run it almost like a playoffs, do like a TV show where it's the Southwest versus this week, and I'm not saying it would be real, but you would give you another TV show to run, right? This week it's California versus Florida, and, blah, 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 and have standings and everything else. Put old wrestlers in charge of those particular divisions. I mean, that's a whole new TV show right there.
Maybe the territories would be like franchises under the umbrella of the sports league. Because back in the day, each territory was their own league. Like they ran their own shows, and WWF, which was WWWF before it became WWF, and then had to change it to WWE. They were in the New York territory, and then you had the Atlanta territory, the Cincinnati territory. There were all these territories. And then Vince McMahon Jr. comes and just takes over everybody and consolidates and just wiped everybody out, basically. But I could see WWE being like a franchise and having the different areas, territories as sub-franchises. That would be interesting for sure. Now, would Vince, you think, make it a condition that, okay, Saudis, you're going to pay 28% more than everybody, but you got to put me back in creative control. Do you think he would make that kind of demand, or do you think we're past those days?
I don't think so. I think he's beyond that now. I think he's at a point where he realizes that, you know what, let's just get this done. Let me hand it off to somebody else and go from there. I don't think so. I mean, far be it from me to predict what Vince McMahon is thinking. But I kind of feel like, and I also kind of feel like too, the moment that the sale is done, I think Stephanie comes back in.
The only one issue I'm going to end this topic with is talking to Don Pappas, who was on our show a couple weeks back, and she used to work for WWE Canada, and she was in the music industry before, but she came into the world of wrestling, and she was helping with PR and organizing events, etc. And she was saying it's literally like a circus. Everything is a work. So you never know for certain. Like, for example, we're talking about this now. So they've already achieved their job. They're already bringing Vince in. Is Vince pushing out Triple H and Stephanie? You know, real life to fantasy is all blurred. The Saudis are going to come take over the way the Germans brought the power plant in The Simpsons. You never know what's real until it actually happens. Everything could be a work. Everything could be fake or news or kind of real. And they blur the lines of fantasy reality. But it makes for a great conversation. It's definitely a great soap opera.
Well, I think that you used exactly the right term there at the end, soap opera, right? I think that's one of the things that actually has been missing from wrestling for a little while is that there were instances where things that were completely outside of the ring would you be talking about Vince McMahon, and I don't want to, not necessarily about indiscretions or things like that. But, is Vince going to do this? Is what's going on with TNT and all this kind of stuff. There was a lot of that kind of stuff going on too. And it kept things in the forefront. People were talking about it outside of wrestling. They were talking about it in a business sense. Do I think the Saudi angle is a work? No, I don't. I think WWE is actually going to be sold. But is Vince creating this sort of, I can't believe he would sell to the Saudis. Why would he sell to the Saudis? Yeah, I think he's playing that up. Do I think Stephanie left because there's some sort of rift between the two of them? No, I don't think so at all. I think it just means that Stephanie doesn't need to be there right now. And it's just another angle. Do I think she's not involved? I think she's probably still involved. But yeah, then the Saudis bring her back and it's part of the work. Like, look, now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to bring Stephanie and Triple H back to run the show because that's who should be running the WWE, right? Well, that looked great, but it's probably been the plan the whole time, right? So Stephanie, go take a nice vacation and we'll see you in 3 months or 6 months, right?